All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is David Bush, and I'm here with Jim Cathcart and our distinguished guest, Dr. Tony Alessandra, and we're going to get to introducing him here shortly, and we're excited that you're here. If this is your first time visiting us, we're excited that you're watching the Extraordinary Life Show. This is our opportunity to bring success seekers and entrepreneur-minded individuals the best in class, best practices, best strategies, tips, tools, and life hacks on how to live the extraordinary life and how to succeed both in life and in the marketplace. And if you missed our interview with Tracy Tremendous Jones last week, I'd make sure that you went to our website, theextraordinarylife.com, and check out the previous episodes, especially the one with Tracy Jones. She's got an amazing new book out, so you're going to want to make sure that you check that out. Well, without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Jim Cathcart, the motivation expert. He is my partner in crime, and he is going to have an awesome opportunity to interview. Easy for me to say. Awesome opportunity to interview one of his close friends and an expert that has authored many books and many articles, films, videos, all kinds of great things. And I think you're going to be in for a real treat. So, Jim, take it away.
I'll happily do that. Well, next to my son, my closest friend in the world is our guest today, Dr. Tony Alessandra. I've known Tony since 1979 when we ran into each other at a conference where both of us were speaking. He was a college professor. I was a full-time speaker, and we started collaborating. It seemed that everything we did just worked right. We hit it off instantly, and we've been best friends ever since. We've co-authored books and traveled much of the world together and had a lot of great times. Well, the reason Tony's a guest on our program today is that Tony is genuinely extraordinary. You know, if you look at the definition of ordinary, I had a email dialogue with someone about this today. Technically it says, with no special or distinctive features: normal, usual, standard, typical, common, customary, habitual, regular, routine. That ain't Tony Alessandra. Tony Alessandra, years ago in New York and New Jersey, growing up as a tough kid on the streets, found out that he needed to change his life direction or he was going to end up like a bunch of his Italian colleagues who belong to a large organization that shall go nameless. Instead, he ended up going to college, getting a master's degree, and then going on and getting his doctorate in marketing. And Tony's life has been absolutely remarkable. For as long as I've known him, I've just seen him click off one more item after another on his bucket list, and his bucket keeps getting bigger. So this is a guy who truly lives the life, and he owns a company that helps people understand what makes them tick. And I'll let him tell you more about that. But Tony, welcome to the show, and give the audience just a little glimpse of the path from birth to business.
Well, we'll make it quick. Born and raised in the Lower East Side of New York City. After 9 years in Manhattan, moved to the Bensonhurst section of Brooklyn. But when I was in New York, I grew up in the projects, and we went down. There were 4 buildings. That was a square, and in the middle of the 4 buildings was a little playground for kids. And one day I got in a fight. I don't know how I got in the fight, but I got beaten up. Went upstairs crying to my father. My father, again, who's a New Yorker, realized what was going on and said, "You got to go back downstairs and fight that kid again and win." Now remember, this was in the early 50s. And, you know, he took off his belt and he said it was either this or you go down and fight that kid. I knew what the belt was, so I went down for the kid who just beat me up, and I beat him up. A few days later, he came back with one of his friends. I had to fight that kid, which led me for years to be a pretty successful, accomplished street fighter, which really did, I believe, strongly influence who I am today, because it gave me confidence. It made me a very positive thinker, I believe. But it also made my friends not put social pressure on me. So, you know, they did not try to force me into things. Otherwise, it was a street fight. As I said, I moved to Brooklyn. I lived there for a few years, then to Jersey. So I'm a Jersey boy. Went to Toms River High School. After I graduated Toms River High School, went on to Notre Dame. In my freshman year, I was a walk-on football player, made the team. But during that summer, realized that I probably wouldn't get into a game. I mean, I was good, but I wasn't that good to play on Notre Dame. So I switched to rugby, tore everything in my knee within the first 2 weeks of rugby. The irony is that football team won the national championship that year. I would have been on the team. So anyway, I graduated Notre Dame in 4 years, went to the University of Connecticut, which we lovingly call UConn. When I graduated from there with an MBA, actually got a job, my first job, 1970, as a college prof. And I liked it because you only had to work like 26 weeks a year, a year off. But I did that, moved to California, taught at Cal State Fullerton, realized that I liked teaching, went back to Georgia State University in Atlanta, got a PhD. It was there that my professor, my doctoral dissertation chairman, now Jim knows this, but David, I don't know if you know this, my doctoral dissertation chairman at Georgia State University was a gentleman named Dr. David Schwartz. And Dr. David Schwartz was the author of the multi-million bestseller, The Magic of Thinking Big. And he was a motivational speaker. So I'm looking at him, I'm looking at how much money he's making, how many speeches he's doing as a college prof, and I figured, hey, you know, this may be something I can do. And so I started doing some speaking on the side, eventually got a job at the University of San Diego, which brought me out to San Diego. That's when I got a speech to do Century 21. In addition to the small pittance they gave us for our fee, they gave us tabletop booths so that we can sell all the real estate agents, and whose table was right next to me but a guy named Jim Cathcart. And during the breaks, we would chat. We felt that we had a lot in common. Eventually, this was early 1979, we decided to become business partners. And of course, the first big decision was, do I move out to Oklahoma or does he move out to San Diego, California? That was an easy one.
Yeah.
The second big decision was whose name was going first. Now, I pushed for alphabetical, Alessandra, Cathcart. But in all fairness, we decided to flip a coin and it became Cathcart Alessandra. We did that for several years and then decided to kind of build our own careers from there. For many years, the two of us, very, very active keynote speakers all over the world. But in 2000, I decided to go a little different path than Jim. Jim stayed with being a full-time professional speaker, as he is still to this day. But in 2000, I decided to spin off all of my employees and my business to start another company called Speaker's Office. Gave that over to my key employee. And that's when I decided to build the online assessment business. And as that grew, I decided to cut back in speaking. You know, so here I am today doing a fraction of speeches that I used to do in our prime. So there is hopefully a quick CNN on.
Yeah. And when Tony says a fraction of the number of speeches, we were each doing like 120 talks a year. So that's 240 round trips every year. And as partners, you know, we'd come back to the office and count all our winnings, basically go over the assignments, talk about the next steps and so forth. And it never occurred to us we'd ever get to a point where we were doing 20, 30, 40 speeches a year. That was like retirement to the two of us. But today, Tony's got a thriving multi-million-dollar business doing assessments for Ken Blanchard companies, for Brian Tracy, for Human Resource Press, for, you know, all kinds, Action Coach International. He is the go-to source for psychological profiles, online assessments. that are done, like the DISC profiles, the sales IQ profile that he and I and Jeffrey Gittermer recently created, leadership profiles, values and motivators profiles. I mean, it's quite a rich business today.
That it is. And, the key is assessments, regardless of what they are, hopefully provide some insight into your strengths and your struggles. There are self-assessments where you only take it yourself, which would be like a DISC assessment or the motivators assessment. And then there are 360 assessments, which you take, a self-assessment, but then you ask other people to answer the same questions that you answered in terms of how they see your behavior. So you get to see yourself through the eyes of other people. And that's a real growth experience.
Yeah. Tony, you've got a saying that I want to capture, and that is what your mother told you, talking about going the extra mile. What's your saying?
Oh, yeah. My mother always told me to go the extra inch. And it wasn't, she said a mile's too far. An inch you can easily do. And that was a big, when you talk about becoming extraordinary or an achiever, my mother set that process in motion for me because she said, go the extra inch each day in each area of your life. Do one little tiny thing. Do one extra push-up. Do one extra sit-up for physical. Read one more page than you did the day before to build mental capacity. Give one more compliment to somebody each day to build up the social side of your ability. And just constantly, extra inch, extra inch, extra inch. And she said, if you go enough extra inches, you've gone the extra mile. So it was that ability that has been drilled into me. I still do it to this day, and it's constant self-improvement, a little bit at a time. I always look at where I am, what I've done, what I've accomplished, what I've written, and I look at it and say, okay, how do I make it better? One extra inch, that's it.
Excellent. David?
Yeah, for those of you that just tuned in, we'd like to ask that you share this video on your profile and just help us to get the word out to help more people to live an extraordinary life. And we'll continue the conversation with Dr. Alessandra. And I want to just throw out a question, Jim, just in terms of you, both of you are Speaker Hall of Fame members. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people out there that are thinking about, becoming an extraordinary communicator or becoming an extraordinary speaker where they're paid large sums of money to be able to go up there and give a speech. I want to ask Dr. Alessandra if he would share his one tip that he would share with an aspiring speaker, and then maybe Jim, you could take it from there.
Sure.
Yeah, I would say, I'm not sure I can give one tip, David, because one tip would overly simplify it. I would say if you really want to become a better speaker, if you have not joined, let's say, a group like Toastmasters to do that, to get some experience, to join a local chapter of the National Speakers Association, that would be
just attend as a guest.
Attend as a guest. Hopefully go to the national convention, which is a mind blower. And in addition to all of that, that's a great first steps is to get a good mentor. Now, whenever somebody came to me, I'm not the mentor type. I'll give a tip here or there, but when it comes to DISC, I'm a high D. I always pass people on to Jim Cathcart. He is the classic speaker coach, and everybody who works with him not only very much appreciates and enjoys the experience, but they get better at what they do. And in fact, I'm one of those people, because when we first got together, my strength was in marketing and sales, and his strength was in speaking. And one of our deals was, hey, Jim, I'll mentor you in sales and well, not really sales, more marketing, if you will mentor me in how to be a better speaker. So it was a real good marriage made in heaven. Our partnership was kind of funny because we really are very different. When somebody would call the office, remember this, Jim? When somebody would call our office and the secretary would wonder, who do I pass this on to? She would say, hey, is this a call for Leave It to Beaver, which is Jim Cathcart, or Welcome Back Cotter, which was me? And that's how they did it. But yeah, I would just say, join some of these groups, give some speeches, get out there. The more you practice, the better you're going to get, but get a good mentor, a good coach, somebody like a Jim Cathcart or Patricia Fripp would be excellent choices.
Thank you. Very nice. Well, Tony, let's talk about assessments for a minute, because that's your focus now, and you've done so much. I would consider you one of the world's leading authorities on behavioral style or personality assessment, because of the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that you've helped with that. Why should people take time to do that? Why are these instruments so important and so valuable? And by the way, the name of Tony's company is assessments24x7.com, assessments24x7.com. So check that out. Or if you can't remember that, just go to ALESSANDRA.com and click through. But Tony, why is that so valuable? Why should people take time or make time to assess themselves?
Well, again, if you want to go, let's go back to my mother's always go the extra inch. If you want to get better than where you are now, to go from ordinary to extraordinary, you need to say, hey, where am I? Where do I want to go? How am I going to get there? I mean, three simple questions. All of us know this.
Yeah.
The assessments really tell you, where am I? What are my strengths? What are my struggles or weaknesses? And then you can start saying, okay, I'm going to create a path to enhance my strengths. We don't want to ignore the strengths. We want to enhance them. And also, are there any weaknesses that I can actually work on one at a time? For me, when we talk about DISC, and for those listeners who are not aware of it, the D is dominance, the I is influence, the S is steadiness, the C is conscientiousness, DISC. Jim and I have published works in the past, and we use different terms back then. We call them directors, thinkers, relators, and socializers. But one of my weaknesses as a D, all right, more dominant personality, was I'm not a good listener. Of course, with 4 kids and a wife, I have to be a good listener, especially 4 of them female. So I had to work on that particular natural weakness and get better at it. So although it is probably a traditional weakness of a high D style, it doesn't mean it always has to be a weakness. So that's one aspect when you look at behavior. The motivators assessment tells you why you do what you do, what motivates you, what's your passion, basically. So when I took the assessment, it said that I had a high economic motivator, which I always knew I do, but also an interesting high altruistic. So the desire to help people, but also to make money. But again, it just kind of tells you where you are. It's great in an organization in terms of not only self or personal development, but also team building, interpersonal communication. A lot of companies use assessments right now. We're doing a lot of work recently on using it in terms of hiring and selection, where you actually look at your employees based on certain success criteria. Let's take sales, for instance. So what are the sales of the salespeople? How long have they been with the company, et cetera? It's maybe 3 or 4 success criteria. And then we actually test all of them with typically a DISC assessment, a motivators assessment, and sometimes with what we call a Hartman value assessment that measures decision-making and thinking style. And then we say, okay, can we differentiate between the high performers and the low performers? And if we can, in fact, create a profile, a benchmark, that's what we call a benchmark of the high performers, then as we are looking for candidates for that kind of job, we test the candidate in the same assessments that the present employees took, especially the high performers, and we match the candidate's profile to the benchmark, the high performer benchmark, and determine whether this candidate does in fact have the ability to be a high performer. Now we do not, this is very crucial, we do not hire or not hire solely based on the assessment results. It's at best 20% of what goes into a hiring decision. It's the resume, it's the experience, it's the education, it's the recommendations. There's a lot of things that come into play, not just the assessments. Back to you, Jim.
Yep, and David, why don't you drive from here? Because I know there's several points you wanted to touch on.
You bet. Well, great insight. And I'd like to ask a follow-up question to that, Tony, and just maybe you could clarify for those high achievers or success seekers, based on all your experience and doing so many different assessments and speaking and writing books and doing movies, what are a couple of things that you could maybe say would be common denominators amongst those high achievers that oftentimes prevent them from living a more extraordinary life or having more extraordinary success? Is it truly that they just don't know where they're at and they don't know where they're going or how to get there? Or is it something deeper than that?
Well, I think that's one aspect. I mean, really, you have to sit down at one point and say, what is important to me? What would I like to achieve? Whether you write it down or simply clarify it in your head. That was one of the big differences between me and Jim. Jim wrote things down. He had his 5-year plan. He carried it with him. Am I right, Jim?
Yeah.
Whereas me, I had it in my head. I kind of visualized it. I saw where I wanted to go, but I let opportunity kind of take me in the direction that I felt I should go. I mean, I never had a goal of becoming a speaker. I never had a goal of having an online assessment business. It was sort of like water finding its flow. I went in that direction. But I think for most people, you need to really clarify what's important to you. A couple of other things I think are crucial. I have a philosophy, what goes around comes around. I really help people. If somebody comes to me asking for help, I will give them help. I'm not sure that I go out and seek people to help, whereas Jim does. I don't necessarily do that, but anybody who comes to me for help, I'm always there, willing to help in whatever way. But I really believe that my life has been very much influenced by that, what is it, karma, whatever you want to call it. What goes around comes around.
It's called the Vito Corleone factor.
Excuse me?
Vito Corleone factor.
That's right. So maybe it does go way back to my early days in New York and Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So I think those are important things. Also seeking help. I think that if you are open, not only to help people, but to seek help from people, I think that sort of pushes you along the way. I'm always on the phone with people. Jim could probably verify that, it's been said that sometimes a phone grows out of my ear. I'm on the phone a lot, but I'm always talking to people, calling up people like Jim. Hey, Jim, what's new? What have you been doing lately? What's working for you? And I do that not just with Jim, but with a lot of our colleagues. And that's where some great ideas come and where I can go in a particular direction. And that's what I think our listeners need to do. They need to really reach out to people, talk to people, network with people. And when I say network, I'm not the kind of networker that likes to go out to networking events and meet people face to face. Jim loves that. I don't. But I like to meet people ear to ear. I'm always on the phone, always talking to people. Mm-hmm. But when I'm with people, I'm outgoing. But I think internally, Jim, I really think I'm internally more of an introvert.
Okay. I won't argue with you. I could do a half hour on that, but I won't argue with you.
Right, David, what other path did you want to go down here?
Yeah, well, I think that what I've appreciated about just getting to know the both of you is that both of you have unique talents, skills, and abilities, and you've learned to leverage those talents, skills, and abilities to be able to live an extraordinary life. And I'd like to maybe throw out there just an offer to those people that are watching the recording or watching this live, an opportunity to connect up with one of your best assessments to help them to gain more clarity of what their current reality is. Anything that you could share with our viewers?
Absolutely. So I'll make this offer. Anybody who wants to contact me, and we'll give my email address in a minute, I will give you an opportunity to take one of two assessments. Whatever, just one of the two. One would be the DISC assessment to determine what is your behavioral style. So it's a self-assessment. You'll come out either a DISC, and it's a great assessment because it tells you how you do what you do. The other option is the motivators assessment. And the motivators will basically tell you why you do what you do. So it will tell you whether you're more altruistic, more aesthetic, more economic, political, theoretical, whatever. So it gives you one of 7 categories, but it tells you how much you have in each of the 7 categories. Same thing with DISC. How much of a D, an I, an S, or C? It doesn't just pick one, it gives you the percentages of each. So if anybody sends me an email, David, and asks, give me the DISC, give me the motivators, one or the other, I will do it at no charge.
Fantastic.
Very generous.
And the best contact place to get you, would it be to contact you through the website, or would you like to provide other contact information?
Well, whatever is easiest for people, I'll give you 2 email addresses. Excuse me. Dr. Tony, DRTONY, at assessments24x7.com. That's assessments, that's plural, ASSESSMENTS 24x7.com. So DRTONY at assessments247.com. The other one is AJA, those are my initials, Anthony Joseph Alessandra. So AJA at Alessandra.com, ALESSANDRA. I spell out that there's only 1 L and 2 S's because years ago, if you put in 2 L's and 1 S, you got a porn site.
Well, that's
I know
that's
a lot
clever. Somebody's been tracking you, I guess.
Right now, but so either one, tell me which one you want. And thanks to David and Jim, you're getting it at no charge.
Fantastic. For those extraordinary viewers that have stayed through the presentation to see this, they get the benefit of capturing that free assessment. So as we recap today, Jim, we've had some great advice from the pugilist, Dr. Tony Alessandra, and just, the idea, that one story of going back and, embracing the challenge or embracing the obstacle and the fear and what that taught, in today's millennial generation and so many Gen Xers and millennials raising up kids that are getting participation awards. Any advice in terms of some of those younger generation viewers that are watching today that maybe have been given some opportunities or never saw the backside of a belt or never were told to get into a fight to overcome their fears? Any insights or wisdom you could give them, Tony?
Yeah, well, I will not tell them to use a belt or to get in a fight. But, I think we learn a lot and we grow a lot, more so, I think, from our failures than our successes. And, there was a movie years ago, I think it was with Fred Astaire, where one of the lines in it was, pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and start all over again. Mm-hmm. And I really think that that's a mentality that people today need to have. You mentioned about just participation awards. That's all well and good, but there are winners and there are losers. And if you are a loser, okay, in any particular event, not in life, but in an event, learn from it to do better the next time. Mm-hmm. And hopefully one day you will, in fact, win and then win over and over again. But, don't be afraid of failure. I think that's a great growth experience.
Well, resistance is absolutely essential for growth. Try to develop a muscle without having something resist it. Same thing's true psychologically. The same thing's true in your overall personality. You've got to have difficulty in order to become better and stronger and more capable. Otherwise, you remain only strong enough to deal with the tiny little world that you find yourself trapped in. So seek out difficult, like Dr. Norman Vincent Peale used to say, the only people without problems are the people in the graveyard. So pray to God, give me some problems, Lord, I need to grow.
Yeah.
So face your fears, go that extra inch, as Dr. Alessandra's mom told him. It's going above and beyond what's usual, regular, and customary. Even if it's 1 inch, it'll surely add up to be a mile before long. And understand where you are. There's a great insight that I got that said, David, you know a lot about you, but it's what you don't know about you that is maybe holding you back from living your best life, achieving your best success. And that's what the assessments that Dr. Alessandra has created will do for you, is really help you to uncover those weaknesses and help you understand your strengths. You may feel like a misfit, and you may feel like you're not fitting in because you're just not seeing things the same way other people are, but the assessments will help awaken you to the things that you have that are creative to you, that you could leverage and have extraordinary results with. So be sure to visit assessments24x7.com, and you can rewind the tape and listen to Dr. Alessandra give his email address again if you want to take advantage of that free assessment. So for Jim Cathcart and Dr. Tony Alessandra, I just want to say thank you for watching our show. Be sure to check in with us next week for episode 5, and Jim's going to be talking a little bit more about what motivation means and how to become more self-motivated, bringing principles from his brand new book, The Self-Motivation Handbook. Be sure to check that out. Jim, any final words?
The final words. Good job, David, and thank you so much, Tony. This was excellent material, and I'm inspired. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and thank you guys for making this a valuable show.
Our pleasure.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.